Okay, so let's start thinking about absolute value and what it means. So let's take a look at this problem here. Noah and Diego start walking from their house, but in opposite directions. After some time, they arrive at their destination, which is marked on the number line. Who walked the furthest? Well, let's take a look. Let's see how far Diego walked. He started at 0 and he walked 6 points to the right. So he went in a positive direction 6 units. Now, Noah, on the other hand, he walked to the left. He actually went in a negative direction and he ended up at minus 10. Now, the question says who walked the furthest? Well, we can count how far Diego walked. He walked 6 units. But how far did Noah walk? Well, Noah actually walked 10 units. Okay, he didn't walk negative 10 units. He might have ended up at negative 10 elevation or negative 10 blocks from his house or blocks to the west or blocks to the east, but he cannot walk a negative distance. In whatever direction you go, if he goes up, if he goes down, if he goes to the left, he's still walking some direction. So we can actually use what's known as absolute value to determine how far Noah has walked. And these two little lines here, the vertical lines that I just drew, those are the sign for absolute value. And what absolute value is telling us, it's telling us that Noah, he went in a negative direction 10 points. But the absolute value of his distance is 10. Okay, so Noah, absolute value of negative 10, he actually walked 10. Diego, absolute value of 6, he walked 6. Now, absolute value tells us how far away a point is from 0. How far away is a point from 0? All right. In our case, Noah, he ended up at negative 10. So the absolute value of negative 10 is 10 because he is 10 points or 10 units away from 0. So to determine the distance from 0, we can use absolute value. So here is 0 here. Absolute value tells us how far away a point is from 0. And if we're measuring distance, distance can never be negative. We can never have a negative distance. We can go in a negative direction, but we cannot have a negative distance. Let's see what I mean by that. So we can go in a negative direction. That means our number can be to the left of 0 and they can have a negative value. So they can have a negative value of 8. For example, we could have a negative temperature of 8 degrees Celsius. We could have a negative elevation of 8 meters below sea level. Or we could even have negative $8 in our bank account. But our absolute value of negative 8 is determined by how far away from 0 it is. Well, negative 8 is 8 points away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 8 would be 8. Let's pretend that we started with $0 and we bought something that cost $50. In our bank account now, we actually have negative $50 in our account. We're in debt for $50. What's the absolute value of negative 50? How far away from our 0 balance are we? Well, we're $50 away. We have a negative balance, but we're $50 away from 0. Finally, let's take a look at maybe a scuba diver. Let's think that a scuba diver starts diving at 0 meters or sea level, and he dives down. So he's going down. Remember, on our horizontal number line to the left, our numbers are descending or decreasing or they're negative. Okay, let's say that our scuba diver dives down, I don't know, 35 meters with some good fish down there. So he's now 35 meters below sea level. He went in a negative direction. He went under the water. But how far away from zero is he? How far away from the surface is he? Well, we use absolute value to tell us that. We say that his absolute value, the absolute value of negative 35 is 35. He's 35 meters from zero, but in a negative direction. So the absolute value of a number will tell us how far away that number is from zero. Now, absolute value can also be used for positive numbers, of course. Let's say a mountain climber climbed 100 meters. And we can say, well, the absolute value of 100 meters is 100. He's 100 meters away. So the absolute value is always a positive number. So we write the absolute value using our two vertical lines. And we can also do some sums here. I don't know why that z is there. The absolute value of negative 1 plus the absolute value of 4. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1, plus the absolute value of 4 is 4, and that's 5. In the next video, we're going to go through an example of where we would use absolute value.